Okay, everybody, House to Home is here. This is your home, and we are your house, metaphorically, for anything you want to know about the real estate industry. Gina, Liz, and Jason, we are a team. We are a tripod, and we today are bringing you. Ladies, is there any such thing as a minor setback in this segment? I know we're going to talk about that today and some regulations and everything like that. But is there a minor setback when we talk about like real estate? Gina, it always seems like you tend to
No.
be very, very passionate about talking about these things.
About setbacks? Oh, I'm passionate about everything.
Yeah. So
Um,
let's give it
yeah,
some context and everything.
there are
Yeah, when we
minor
talk about
setback issues.
yeah, when we talk about setbacks, exactly what are we referring to?
You're
Liz,
okay.
you go
So
at it.
setbacks normally, the government requires that you have 15 feet from the front boundary point, and then you have to have 8 feet from the side boundary points, and then on the rear side you should have 10 feet. So usually when Gina and I list a piece of property for sale, or we would normally double check the boundary points if possible. If not, we're going to say, hey, where are your boundary points? Because those are critical matters when you close escrow. The bank always requires that you meet the government standards. So many years ago, this wasn't important. And then as they found that there were more issues that cropped up, then that became a standard policy with the bank procedures.
And by issues, I'm assuming you mean like more homes and properties that were in violation of that rule.
That's right. And remember the old days, your dad would say, hey, from that coconut tree to that coconut tree would
Yep.
be your boundary point. That was the old way.
Yeah.
Now it's gotten really strict that may have been what your grandfather or your dad told you. However, it's all about the survey. So there are two types of surveys: the as-built that will show how the distance between your house and your boundary points on each side of the home. So these are critical things. And the document Gina's talking about, which he'll expound on,
Yep.
has to
Here we
do,
go.
well, what if it's short and what do you do about it? Gina?
I have to say that over the years, in the most recent few years, I've noticed that when you have an issue with setback and you follow this guideline that the government of Guam, it's on the Department of Land Management's website. But if you follow their guidelines and you submit this, and you try to make sure that everything that they request is put together when you submit your documents, there is a part of this document that states how much time they require to respond to you, what they need, when you can expect to get the director's comments. And the last 3 times, so this is recently, right? I cannot say this existed in the past, but the last 3 times that my sellers or buyers, whomever I was representing for that particular transaction, submitted and followed these guidelines and submitted the request for a setback variance, I have to say the Department of Land Management, the planning division, followed this. And they honestly came back and responded. In one case, they came back and said, yes, based on the completed application that your buyer submitted, we do find that it is, based on the law, that we can grant the variance. And on another particular transaction, the seller submitted the request and they came back and said, okay, you submitted the request, but we have the following questions. The seller submitted the documents they required. And I have to tell everybody, land management followed their own guidelines and gave us a required documents in a timely manner. Both buyer and seller in these two separate transactions were quite, they were really happy that, the government process really worked.
Yeah,
and they really
unlike a lot
it.
of the documents that you've shared and the public policy pertinent to real estate that we've discussed on this segment over the years, this is actually pretty cut and dry. I mean, it's not very complex legalese. I mean, it's very easy to understand. It's like, okay, you need one document saying that you tried in good faith and exhausted all resources to fix the setback.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Now I have to point out
It's not the SAT.
Yeah, but I have to point out that if you're building your home or your residential structure was built between November of 1991 and 1997, let's say, for example, your setbacks were short. During that period of time between 1991 and 1997, the setback law was not in place. So we've had situations where we sold homes that was built in that window, but they were considered non-conforming because the setback was short. So all we had to do was provide documentation that shows the building permits and the plans that show that the structure was built during that window of time, and the government would allow the bank and the government would allow for it because during that window there was no law regarding setbacks.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question because I thought the verbiage you just used there, Liz, was kind of interesting. You said the measurements and the dimensions were short. I was always assuming that when you have a piece of property that's in violation with that 15 in front, 8 on the sides, 10 in the back, that you would actually exceed those numbers, but you can actually be in violation if you come up short as well.
That's right. So
Yeah.
in these cases, sometimes it becomes short. Either the family member extended the house and the family grew and they built to the sides and to the front to accommodate their family's needs. So in that respect, they didn't comply. But again, if they did that during that window of time and they have some proof, documentation that shows that these extensions or the structure was built during that period, then they would be exempted. They would be called legal non-conforming.
Okay, now Gina, my next question, I guess, hopefully is the most obvious. How often do you as professional realtors actually see properties that don't conform to these requirements?
Me personally, maybe once or twice a month.
That's a lot, I would think.
That's a lot. Either
I mean, you see a ton of deals because you're Gina Campus. I mean, you see a ton of deals anyway, but
no,
but
it just
once or twice a month
means,
is significant.
Yeah, it just means it's occurring too. I mean, yeah, it's occurring too often. So we really do need to know how to deal with this. I mean, the first option is, and I'm talking as if I'm dealing with the listing. I'm taking a listing from an owner. Option number one, do you want to demolish it? Option number two, let's find out when it was created. When did this problem get created? Because if it was created in that 91 to 96, 97 timeline, then it's not illegal. It's not, it's conforming. It's legal based on that timeline. But you got to go get something to show. You got to prove that it was done in that timeline and then get the government to endorse and sign off and say, yes, we acknowledge it was done in that timeline. Because in absence of that statement from the government, you're illegal. And so, so option number one, demolish. Option number two, find out the timeline. Option number three, is there an option number three? I mean, you got to figure it out. I think you really only have those two options. Or honestly, I did have a customer sell the property as is. He was not able to prove that it was built in that timeline where it was illegal. And so he ended up just saying, listen, my house doesn't meet setback. So Jay, setback violations are only if they're short. If you exceed the minimum setback, then you're fine, but only if you're short. And so in this case, the seller said, Gina, I can't correct it. I might have built and I didn't follow the setback. So let's just sell it as is. And yes, there's a market out there of buyers that would be willing to pay for a property in as is condition. But mind you, there's a as is discount, right? So, that's a factor.
And I think sometimes the banks will, it's up to the bank. If they're getting a loan, if you're getting cash, there's no problem with that because you can buy anything in as is condition because you're paying cash. However, when you're dealing with the banks, the bank may have their own requirements. Now, we've seen situations where there is encroachment or like your boundary points, somewhat, you'd either have to shave, like Gina put, what is the solution? Like if the balcony or the overhang goes beyond, they'd have to shave that off to comply. And we've had people shave off parts of the building to comply. Otherwise,
I mean, it sounds funny and it sounds like a relatively easy job to do. I would think that maybe taking what, an eighth of an inch off of a balcony. That's a pretty significant amount of work for a contractor.
Well, try
Yeah.
taking a whole bedroom out of the equation.
Uh, there's a lot of emotional labor that goes into that too.
Right, right.
So
But
okay, so I guess so now that we know that this is a framework, and it's very, very easy to digest, and anybody either on the government side or the buyer or the seller, anyone can parse this and be able to figure out what's going on. I mean, it is, kind of like the commandment of how to deal with these setback issues. Where do we go from here? How do we ensure that like these setbacks are kept to a minimum, hopefully, if not completely eliminated?
Well, the first thing I would advise people to do is don't build or attach anything to your structure until you get a licensed surveyor to mark your boundary points. And my son is actually building a home. He's in the process of building right now. And because of I decided to hire a surveyor to go plot the exact frame of the home. I had him go and mark it so that when the contractor started digging for the footings, because it was when I looked at the map and I looked at his home, in my mind, I thought it was going to be tight. So for the contractor to be able to get it just right and meet those setbacks, I felt would be kind of hit and miss, because it's hard to eyeball that, right? I mean, yes, he's supposed to shoot it himself with his own equipment and lay out the frame of the house before they start digging, but I don't take any chances. I hired a surveyor.
Gina.
Yep.
Obsessed
Gina
much?
did that. Yep.
Gina
hired a surveyor.
What's one thing if your mom is a realtor, it's another thing if your mom is either Liz or Gina and you're building a property, because I mean the surveyor is gonna grill you, your inspector is gonna grill you, and then you've got these two.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I had the surveyor basically draw it out on the property.
Yeah, it is a hell of a lot of work, but you
no-brainer.
know what? With you two on the job, it is going to be up to code, and of that I have no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now that we've talked about setbacks, can we like kick back, because I feel a lot better about this topic now. Let's all go like just relax and
Kick back on your setback, guys. You know what to do.
there, kick back on your new property, knowing it is up to speed. So, ladies, thank you as always.
call
And
us
if
for more information.
there you go. And what is the number once again?
687-0911.
She's the hotline for real estate.
How many times do you actually get emergency calls by mistake, Liz?
Oh God, not emergency calls. I get a lot of real estate calls.
How did you get 911 as your number?
I chose it.
Okay. Well, if you're in an emergency and you want to know information, that's the person to call. So
There you go.
Gina, how do people get in touch with you? The
They
411?
call Liz.
Okay. See, that's what we believe on this show, guys. House to home is all about teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are interchangeable. People call me Gina. People call Gina Liz. So I just
Yeah.
same.
Ladies, I'm really, really happy to be part of this team. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jason.